All right, you guys, happy Tuesday. And we will start with a question of the day. Now, imagine if you would that you were writing a Netflix series about a 19-year-old kid who had never been in trouble ever, actually. He'd never been arrested, had never committed any crimes. He has a perfect ACT score. So he's also pretty brilliant. But for whatever reason, you decide that this protagonist is going to become a murderer. He's going to one day, out of support for his trans furry lover, maybe he's the furry and the other guy's, I don't really know. The point is he's going to assassinate a political figure in broad daylight, who, it should be mentioned, that particular political figure isn't exactly known for raging against the LGBTQ community. But anyway, that's what this person decides to do, assassinate him. So one afternoon, he scales a rooftop at a university that he never attended, and he accomplishes what he set out to do. He murders Charlie Kirk. What would you expect that young man to do next? If you're just trying to sell this as what you would expect someone to do next logically. Well, today we are going to tell you where exactly Tyler Robinson went after he went to Dairy Queen. And it's interesting. And of course, it just pokes more holes in the Fed sloppy story. So welcome back to Candace. All right, you guys, before we get into this craziness, I want to tell you that this episode is being brought to you by Nimi Skincare. I am very intentional with the brands that I work with, and Nimi is one that I actually use every day because it's clean, simple skincare made right here in America with no ideological baggage, no nonsense, just products that work and align with my values. So you can visit NIMIskincare.com today. Okay, let's jump into this. It was allegedly Tyler Robinson. He was allegedly acting alone on a rooftop, and it is allegedly supposed to have been the first time that he ever killed a human being. So I think most people who are thinking through this, we naturally would expect a little bit of adrenaline, right? Maybe even the thought of what he had just done for the very first time might have made him physically ill. Like we would expect him to maybe lose his lunch, not exactly pop over to a nearby Dairy Queen to have lunch, calmly have lunch and just begin texting his lover, which is why I was very surprised to learn of what Tyler Robinson did thereafter. Ready? Tyler Robinson, we can exclusively confirm to you all, drove 3 hours away from Orem, Utah, down to Panguitch, Utah. I hope I'm saying that right. A lot of the cities sound weird. I think it's Panguitch, Utah. I'm showing you a map of that distance. It is just under 3 hours to get there. Now, what was he doing there? You're probably wondering, did he meet up with somebody? No, he was alone. And what we can tell you that he did when he got there was that he pulled into the Cowboys Smokehouse on North Main Street. He grabbed himself a seat at the bar at this steakhouse, and he ordered himself some more food. Specifically, Tyler Robinson ordered a steak, medium rare, with mashed potatoes and vegetables. There were 3 servers that were working that night, and then after news exploded the following day and people began obsessively sharing, of course, the photo of the suspect, Tyler Robinson, having been captured after 33 hours, well, one of the servers recognized him as the person that was sitting at the bar the night before. So they decided to huddle up with management and said, no, that person, Tyler Robinson, he was here. He was eating a steak. He was eating mashed potatoes. Management said, are you sure? Are you positive that Tyler Robinson said, yes, I'm absolutely sure. Well, they don't have any cameras at this restaurant. So what they decided to do was to verify that he was in the building, not by, of course, consulting outdoor video footage, which they didn't have access to, but rather just looking through credit card charges. Because Tyler Robinson, despite telling his roommate how he wanted to get away with this, remember the messages and like, oh, here's what happened. I don't want anybody to know. Make sure you delete this letter that's under the keyboard, but take a picture of it before you delete it, but read it and then destroy it. He's trying to get away with this crime. Well, he used his credit card. That's how they found it. And so what they did was the right thing. They contacted the feds. Now, that's interesting because I would imagine that after 33 hours, when they sort of gloriously come out and yeehaw, we got him, I would have and call me crazy, I don't know how this stuff works. I'm not an expert, right? We're not experts, but I would imagine the first thing that they would do is that they would probably just try to figure out where he'd been. And maybe one way they would do that would be going through his credit card charges. I would imagine the federal government had that capability, but they didn't do that. Instead, they were contacted days later by this restaurant. The server filed a report responsibly and said, yeah, he was here. We have the literal receipt, the literal receipt. And they explained that Tyler Robinson was not very talkative. He seemed absolutely fine and normal and was texting on his phone. Maybe that's when he was sending more messages to his lover as he was eating a steak. He was sure hungry, is what I would say, but calm nonetheless. He didn't have the jitters. He wasn't scared. He was just hungry. Now, what's fascinating to me is what happens after, because again, I'm expecting that the feds would go, well, let us get down there. Let us get down to Panguitch. Let us start interviewing everybody. Let's start checking all these cameras around here to see if we've got them. No, that's all they did. They sort of were obliged to call them back and to say, okay, what happened? And then that's it. The trail goes cold. Now, remember, I told you guys that I spoke with the lawyer. This would obviously be Erica's lawyer because she's listed as the victim. And they asserted that at this part in the process, what happens next is that the investigators, separate from Erica, are supposed to be, well, investigating. They're supposed to be going around trying to gather more information to prove their case that this is definitely the shooter and he acted alone. I would expect that they would have gone down to this restaurant. I can tell you guys today, they have not. Nobody is interested in going down to this restaurant and speaking with these employees and speaking with people nearby and seeing what they saw and learning about Tyler Robinson's demeanor. Because it's not that kind of an investigation, guys. This is case closed. Giddy up. That's what he was. He went down and he had himself a steak after he had some Dairy Queen. Now, 3 hours is a long ride. I get it. He's probably hungry. And I get that he used his credit card because, I don't know, I guess he's Gen Z. He's never heard of like DVDs and stuff. They've always had the technological capabilities. He doesn't even know what cash is. He didn't even think about just going to an ATM and getting cash out to pull off this crime. He thought through everything else, how to scale the rooftops, how to make this happen, where exactly Charlie was going to sit. But everything else kind of falls apart afterwards. All he could think about was getting food, and he decided the best way to try to get away with murder was to use his credit card. Now, parking aside the fact that he's a 4.0 student with a perfect ACT score, that thought just never crossed his mind to just take cash out. So here is what our now updated timeline looks like from that day. It's been a while since we have revisited that. And I think that we also need to revisit, which we are, the Dairy Queen stop, because it had to have occurred earlier than we had initially documented. It definitely happened, but I think the time frame of the stop is wrong, because if we need 3 hours to get from Orem down to Panguitch, and I have confirmed that that happened. Again, there was a literal receipt, and the FBI knows about it and has that in their possession. Then it's got to be earlier, right? It's got to be slightly earlier that he went to Dairy Queen, which would track for me, because if we know that he was throwing clothes out in the Dairy Queen, that's probably going to be a little bit closer to the shooting, and he's not going to hang around. So here's what we have. We have that press conference that happens at 5:30. At 5:59, Kash Patel tweets that the subject, erroneously tweets that the subject in custody has been released because, they had erroneously tweeted that they had him before that. And he says, our investigation continues. After 6 o'clock p.m. is when we are gauging the first correspondence to have taken place between Tyler and Lance based on the conversation that they were having. 6:38 is when we initially had when that photo was taken. That photo was captured at the Dairy Queen, and I will update that for you guys. I am going back and trying to be more precise, wondering if that needs to be adjusted by an hour. Maybe it was actually 5:38 p.m. and time zones were wrong. I'll follow up with you guys there. And now we can add that 8:45 p.m. That's the time, approximately, that Tyler turned up in Panguitch, Utah. Again, that is 3 hours away from Orem. He has a meal at the bar counter, and then he leaves around 9:30 p.m. Remind you guys that he is fine. He's in a totally fine mood, and he is texting while he is eating, not speaking much to the servers. So when I spoke to the people who had reported this, they suspect, and I think this is a good suspicion, a good instinct to follow, that he may have gone to his grandma's house afterwards, because apparently that's where his grandmother is from, and she lives nearby. And if you guys recall, Tyler Robinson's grandmother was one of the first people to speak out, and she said, "You have the wrong person." She said, "My grandson does not fire guns. My grandson did not commit this murder." And so since I am learning that she is from around here and that she is a local and everyone's familiar with her, they know who she is, I would imagine that it's possible that Tyler Robinson could have gone to his grandmother's house for the night. Again, we don't know that as a fact. I am putting it out there because this is an investigation. And by the way, if you are somebody who is around or rather operates a business around the Cowboy Smokehouse, you may have footage that you're not even aware of. If you have information, maybe the feds called around, I don't know. Please, we are inviting you to send us an email to moretips@CandaceOwens.com, but we can now officially plot that in our timeline, and it just makes the feds' story more just unbelievable. Just unbelievable is what I would say. Nothing they are saying makes any sense. We can also add this to the list of stories that we have broken, because one of my favorite things ever is how no matter how many stories we break, no matter how much information we provide, the haters will forever say, "She has presented no evidence." They're just going on vibes and a dream on the Candace show. That's it. She had a dream, and now she's just blindly pointing the finger at everybody. And so I actually decided while we were on break that I had time to put together a list, and this is by no means definitive. This is just a list of stories that we have broken on this show. So here we go. Charlie's text messages, that was a pretty big one, showing that he was, in fact, abandoning the pro-Israel cause 48 hours before he was assassinated, despite the fact that everyone lied about that fact. We presented the photo of Tyler Robinson at the Dairy Queen on the day of the assassination. Tyler Robinson, we are telling you today, then went to the Cowboy Smokehouse that evening and likely, I should put likely there, avoided traffic lights. We can also tell you that Tyler Robinson called out of work on the 11th. That's another story I'm breaking here. He was citing food poisoning. He called out of work very early in the morning on the 11th, and he also called out of work on the 10th, saying that he had to help his grandmother move furniture. That is an interesting data point that I would like to present to you. Again, he is using his grandmother as an excuse. I think that if I was the federal government and I had unlimited resources, if I was the state government and I had unlimited resources in the form of people's tax dollars, I would probably be wondering if he went to his grandmother's house that night. Just saying. Tyler was working at Wild Electric, by the way, in Santa Clara, Utah. I did not break that story. That was already in the news, but you may have missed that. And that was his excuse. He had to help his grandmother. I also broke the story about Charlie's Catholic considerations. I didn't even mean to break that one, but then I had to present the receipts because people were acting crazy about him attending Mass, praying the rosary, that he died wearing a St. Michael pendant, and that he had a private Catholic funeral Mass. I also broke the story regarding Terrell Farnsworth's strange behavior moments after the assassination. I broke probably the biggest story of all, actually. It is the only reason that we are still discussing this. It's the only reason that we realized the first reason, the primary reason that we recognized the feds were lying to us was because I broke the story that there was no blood on the back of Charlie as he went down, that the bullet did not pass through. I also presented to you guys the photos from inside Charlie's SUV after his assassination. I broke the story that the feds did not impound that vehicle. Broke a story that the feds seized the cameras inside the hospital, that the feds blocked Dr. Trotter from returning to his operating room, and that a phone call was then placed to DC. We are still trying to figure out to who received that phone call, which allowed Dr. Trotter to go back into his operating room. We broke the story that Andrew Colvett lied about the Superman neck. That quotation never came from Dr. Lee Trotter at all. It allegedly came from Erica in a moment of upset. We broke the story that Charlie texted Dan Flood and Andrew Colvett the night before, saying that he was afraid that they were going to kill him. This has now been confirmed by Erica, or at least it was confirmed to me from Erica. We broke the story that Netanyahu called Charlie to make an offer to take Turning Point to the next level. That story is being disputed by Erica. That's a Turning Point on Turning Point fight, okay? I don't know who to believe, but I will say that I confirmed that separately from Andrew Colvett with someone that did not have communication with Andrew Colvett, so I tend to believe that that offer did indeed come through. We broke the story about Fort Huachuca, and we're not done with that. We presented the military police report, backed that up with evidence that Mitch was telling the truth about what happened on September 9th. We broke the story about the Egyptian planes, tracking Turning Point Faith. That document we still have for you, which is coming forward. We will be proven correct on that as well. We broke the story about the bomb dogs failing to detect the recently discharged weapon on September 10th, and that it was actually the feds that then directed three rookie police officers to find it. We also broke the story of the massive check that was coming to Turning Point USA from Pierre. Is it Pierre Dupont? Is it Pierre Falcone? I think it's Pierre Falcone. I really do believe it's Pierre Falcone for a lot of reasons. We are still looking for more information. So when it comes to receipts and evidence, we have been presenting a lot of it. And we are getting no credit for it. We don't care. We don't want credit, actually. What I want is for this to be solved. I want to know who killed Charlie Kirk, and I don't believe it was Tyler Robinson. And on that note, we should get back to the Fort Huachuca story, because this has proven to be a very interesting lead. And we have a couple of interesting updates to add to that. First and foremost, I should say, for good measure, that Turning Point USA would like us to clarify that while, yes, it is true, the tent idea was initially brought up by Elizabeth McCoy, it was ultimately a group decision to move forward with the idea, a group decision between the events team and the exhibitor hall team. Now, the idea from them was that at future tour stops, people would use that tent to grieve and to share their thoughts about how Charlie had changed their lives. I think, just as a spectator here, there are other ways to grieve, and you can still share stories about how Charlie changed your life. You don't need to be under the tent that he was murdered in. That's just my feedback there. Second update, this time regarding Fort Huachuca as well. Erica has submitted another follow-up text regarding her whereabouts on the 8th. Now, you will recall, as I told you yesterday, that the issue with the first message that she provided, which was purportedly a conversation between her and Charlie about dinner on the evening of the 8th, was that the contact name was blocked on the message. It was blacked out on the message. I had received that, by the way, on December 28th. I immediately said, hey, could you unblock that or uncover that, rather? And I followed up about 4 to 5 times, just trying to get that before we came back onto the podcast. I just said, I just want to see the contact number shown. Well, when I got off air yesterday, I had a follow-up, but it unfortunately was not what we were looking for or what we had asked for. It was just a Charlie Kirk contact card, just like this is Charlie Kirk's contact card in my phone. Now, I should add here that I am obviously working through a third party, and they made it clear that Erica has been tied up with something personal. So that's the reason for the delay. There were sick kids as well throughout the holiday. So there's just been a delay on getting that. But I wanted to let you guys know where we are at. No response at all from Brian Harpole. I've told you that several times. Or relatedly, Dan Flood. Now, Dan Flood was not seen at Fort Huachuca, but he does have communication with Brian Harpole. So I wanted to exhaust every effort to get to the bottom of where these individuals were, specifically Brian Harpole and Erica Kirk. Now, regarding Mark Amodei, you will remember that I Mitch had described a person who he was sure was a congressman. He felt that it was a congressman. And I told you that we looked up a congressman that fit the description of what he was telling us: 5'9", glasses, grayish white hair. And we came up with Mark Amodei, and he said that face looks familiar. Then Mark Amodei came out, and he had dropped a YouTube video of a live stream of him on a committee. And then X came back and said he actually missed the first 2 roll calls. This was a 12-hour House committee video. We certainly did not have the time to parse through it in our last episode last year. I did, of course, make that a priority during break. I did go through that 12-hour footage. And I would like to now state unequivocally that I think his story checks out. Now, I realize there's been some confusion because he does, in fact, miss those first 2 roll calls. But people then pointed out to me in the comments that he does appear, you can see him on the screen early on. It is blurry, but that early on where he is sitting, it looks like in his chair. When I visually look at it, it looks like Mark Amodei to me before the roll call. Now, it's certainly by no means definitive, but I think it is indeed very likely that the person that we see on camera is Mark Amodei early on in the hearing. And I am not here to try to make someone fit into the story. I want to actually find the right person and eliminate the wrong people. And to be clear, like I said, Mitch initially contacted me about just Erica Kirk and Brian Harpole. Brian Harpole being the big one, this meeting, this hands-on meeting that looked like mission is on the table. Let's go. Break right before a mission. That's how it was described to me. Now, regarding Mark Amodei, there is someone else that I believe that we should look into. Okay? Follow one lead. If it doesn't lead where we think it's going to go, we can pivot, and something interesting has come up. Now, I will start by restating, I have never felt good about Terrell Farnsworth, okay? Not since that very first phone call I had with him. In fact, the phone call I had with him, I can say, was the very first moment that I went, something's not right here. I told you guys, he just started lying to me repeatedly. Weird. His energy was weird. I was like, what's going on? Why are you being weird? I'm calling you because I'm just trying to let the public know, like, you know, why you took the cameras out. I'm sure there's a logical reason. It is kind of weird that you're there. Why are you there? He's all over the place. And again, this is not in the immediate aftermath. This is not first 48. We've got the jitters. Charlie Kirk's killed. This is like a week past that. And I expressed repeatedly to my audience that something was not right with that phone call. As soon as I hung up, I said to my team, and I'm quoting myself here, that man is guilty of something.